No one sector can tackle the malnutrition problem being faced by the country. This creates an opportune time for various stakeholders, from scientists gathered here to individuals at household level, to provide all stakeholders with time-bound opportunity to strengthen joint efforts and achieve a healthier and more sustainable future. Improving Zimbabwe's food and nutrition security has potential to have a net positive effect by adding 2 to 3 percentage points increase to the country's GDP. Therefore, investing in nutrition promotion prevails as a powerful instrument to build a productive and prosperous nation. The cost of inaction or continuing with business as usual will cost the country if malnutrition persists. So we are all part of the solution to ensure safe, nutritious food for all by 2030. We hope the activities outlined for today's deliberation underpins the effort by plant breeders and partners here present to ensure nutrition issues are addressed, stunting from production. Sustaining these interventions will be the key, and it will necessitate effective national support and international participation. In conclusion, we would like to reaffirm that Food and Nutrition Council will continue to stand ready to support intervention for improved nutrition outcomes that focus on holistically addressing the burden of malnutrition as enshrined in NDS1 and other national policies. I thank you.
Thank you so much. That was Yvonne Mavunga from the Food and Nutrition Council. Thank you so much for the warm remarks and the support. Breeders would need such support in terms of before designing a product, because the products that we are supposed to develop nowadays must respond to consumer demands, which are ever changing. And I think nutrition is one of the key factors that we have to consider. Thank you so much for those words. Without wasting time, please allow me to invite Bruce Mutari to give us some insights on breeding and dissemination of iron beans in Zimbabwe, the current progress and impact. Bruce is working towards a PhD from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, focusing on breeding for drought stress, nutritional iron and zinc, and canning quality in navy beans. He's currently working as a research associate at ICRISAT under the Accelerated Crop Improvement Program. Bruce, thank you so much. You can go ahead. Hello, Bruce. You need to unmute your mic. Yeah. Hello, Bruce.
Okay, yeah. Hello, afternoon, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, my technology was kind of not functioning well, but now okay. Okay, so I'm going to take you through. Can you see my screen?
Not as yet. It was there and then disappeared. You need to reach it.
Okay, can you see it now? Hello?
Yes, Bruce, not yet. I'm not sure. Yeah, probably my internet is slow, but not yet. But I think very soon it should come.
No, we can't see.
You can't see it? Okay. Is there anyone who is able to see the screen? You can raise your hands. Just
No.
No, so nothing is yet, Bruce. You may need to probably restart it. But but it was there and then disappeared.
Maybe someone can present, then while I sort out my computer.
Okay, thanks. Then we can move to the next session on biofortification of maize and Zimbabwe status opportunities by Nakai Matwagen. Nakai is a maize breeder with the Crop Breeding Institute responsible for developing and promoting improved varieties. She is a PhD student at the University of Free State. The title of her study is Genetic Improvement of Grain Zinc in Tropical Adapted Maize. Nakai, you can take the floor. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can
yes,
you hear
you're
me?
loud and clear. Yes, you're loud and clear. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dean. Good afternoon, everyone. Like what Dean has said, my name is Nakai Matongera. I'm working as a maize breeder at the Crop Breeding Institute.
Sorry, Nakai, could you please put it in the presentation mode, yeah, so that at least.
Is it not in the presentation mode?
From my side, probably for others it could be, but not from my side. But you can go ahead, try and go ahead.
Is it okay, Dean?
Not yet, but you can go ahead. I think it could be my internet is slow. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Nakai, please scroll to
hello?
the first slide here. May you
Which
please
one?
scroll to the first slide? The first
This
one,
is
you're on the last one.
This is the first slide.
Oh, we see the take home message. Is that the first slide? The one that says take home message. That's what we see.
Maybe I can share it again. Is this okay?
Yeah, I think slide 31 now.
But on my machine.
Yeah, now we can. Yeah, some of us can now see.
So go ahead, Nakai.
Yeah, you're now
go
on the
ahead.
first. Yeah, you're now on the first slide.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to share our experience in breeding for biofortified maize, and I'm making this presentation with Dr. Thokozile Ndlela of CIMMYT. So this is the presentation outline. I'm going to give you the general overview. I'm also going to talk about the statistics part, the prevalence of micronutrient deficiency, as well as the biofortification efforts in both CIMMYT and also National Agricultural Research Institutes. I'm also going to talk about the opportunities for developing maize with at least 2 nutrients. Then I'll also talk about the success story behind provitamin A maize. Then lastly, the challenges. Then as a way of introduction, we all know that maize is a staple food. It's a staple crop in most countries around the world. And statistics shows that of the 22 countries where maize is mostly consumed, 16 countries are in Africa. And the highest consumption is in Africa is in eastern parts of Africa as well as southern parts of Africa. On the graph there, we can see that maize consumption, like one individual can consume up to 300 grams per day. in southern parts of Africa, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, as well as Lesotho. Then this shows that we are consuming maize more than where the crop originated. Despite its use as a staple crop, maize lacks key nutrients. It lacks lysine and tryptophan. It also lacks zinc, iron, and vitamin A. And the last three, zinc to vitamin A, referred to as micronutrients because they are required by the body in minute quantities. But lysine and tryptophan, because these are essential amino acids, building blocks for proteins, they are referred to as macronutrients. Then
Nakai, sorry. Hello, Nakai, sorry, yeah. It seems some people are just seeing one slide. I don't know what is happening here. There are quite a number of people who are seeing just one slide. So
the first one.
Yeah. No, mine is still slide number 31, but I'm seeing quite a number of people in the chat saying they are seeing one slide.
Okay,
I think the first one.
Someone can present while I take care of this because I don't know, what's happening.
All right. Or alternatively, you guys, you can send. Yes, it's now there. I think it's now. Yeah, so you can go ahead now. This is Bruce.
Sorry, can I go ahead? Oh.
Can Bruce and
No, I'm seeing Bruce. I'm seeing
share?
Bruce. I'm seeing Bruce now.
Hello, Dean, I can present.
Oh, yes, you can go ahead, and then Nakai can come here, because I can see your slide.
Okay, afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to take you through my presentation titled The Breeding Dissemination of High Iron Beans in Zimbabwe. Basically, I'll talk about the progress and the impacts. So this is going to be the layout of my presentation. I'll give a brief background and also talk about the most common market classes in Zimbabwe and who are the major partners in the research and dissemination of high iron beans. Then I'll also give an insight on the traits which are highly valued by value chain actors in Zimbabwe. Then I'll also talk about the varieties which are currently available in Zimbabwe with respect to high iron beans. Then I'll also talk about the progress in breeding of high iron beans and some of the challenges which are encountered. Then I'll also give an insight of the various approaches which were used in dissemination of high iron beans and what were the impacts which were achieved. And lastly, I'll give an overview of the challenges in dissemination of high iron beans. So briefly as a background, you find that 1/3 of child deaths in Zimbabwe are due to malnutrition, mainly due to the inadequate dietary intakes of bioavailable iron, zinc, and also vitamin A. And various approaches have been used in Zimbabwe and also worldwide to try and alleviate the effects of malnutrition. These include the dietary diversification, food fortification, and the nutrient supplementation. However, there are some limitations with these approaches, such as the coverage, also sustainability, and the high recurring costs. Let me say that there's no single strategy which is appropriate. We need to combine these different approaches. And an alternative or complement is the genetic biofortification, which is basically the development of staple crops which are rich in micronutrients. So here we're talking about beans which are rich in iron and zinc content. So here in Zimbabwe, iron beans is currently being used as a vehicle to alleviate the effects of malnutrition in Zimbabwe. So on the common market classes here in Zimbabwe, there are various market classes which are here in Zimbabwe, but the most common one is the sugar type. Here we're talking of the likes of Gloria, SC Sharp, speckled ice. Then the second one is the second most common is the large red mottled. We mainly have got NOA 45 in the market. Then the third most important is the small white, which is mainly for the canning industry. Here we've got the likes of Protea from CBI, then Caledona from Sidco. Then there's also the medium red mottled, Here we've got the likes of Cherry and from CBI, and also the other one from Progenesis. I can't remember the name. Then there's also the snap beans, which is mainly for the export industry. And there's the large red kidney, which is mainly for the canning industry. We've got one variety here in Zimbabwe, Gloxinia, which was released by CBI. And lastly, we've got the large white kidneys, which are also imported in Zimbabwe, but on a very small fraction. So this is a list of the major partners in research and dissemination of iron beans in Zimbabwe. Let me point out that this list is not exhaustive, but I just picked a few just for illustration purposes. There's the Ministry of Agriculture, mainly the DRNSS, CBI, Agritechs, then also the private sector, mainly the seed houses, processors, agro dealers. Then there's Siat Pabra, which has been doing a lot of work in Zimbabwe in terms of promoting high iron bean production and consumption. Then also there's Harvest Plus, also doing the production, the promotion of high iron beans in Zimbabwe. Then there was this big program, the LFSP project, which recently ended. They also did a lot of work in terms of dissemination. Then there are also the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, and other government departments and development partners. Then there are some traits which are highly demanded by value chain actors in Zimbabwe. Here I'm talking with respect to high iron beans. So for example, I'll give an example of the canning, of the processors, the canning industry. They want varieties which combine high iron and drought tolerance and good canning qualities. But at the present moment, we don't, in Zimbabwe, there's no variety which combines all these traits. When you're talking about the Navi bean market class. Then as for farmers, consumers, and traders, they want something which resembles NOA 45, but it should be a sugar market class. So a variety which has got high iron and zinc content, which is highly palatable like NOA 45, and also good agronomic traits with respect to disease resistance, also tolerance to shattering and early maturity, just like NOA 45. Then what varieties do we have here in Zimbabwe when it comes to high iron beans? So quite a number of varieties have been released by Crop Breeding Institute. They did a good work in this area. So there are 5 varieties which have been released by CBI in terms of high iron beans. There's Jasmine, which was released in 2019. Jasmine is not for canning purposes. Then there's also NOA 674, which is a sugar type. There's also Cherry, Sweet Violet, also sugar type, and NOA 45. NOA 45 is the most common high iron bean variety in Zimbabwe, which is being used by various actors to alleviate the effects of malnutrition. I'm well informed that Citgo also has got one candidate variety, which is in the pipeline, which is also a biofortified sugar bean variety. So let's note that in Zimbabwe, there is no biofortified Navi bean variety in the market. Navi bean, I'm referring to those small whites which are meant for canning purposes. So we don't have one. So we find that the canning industry is now being forced to can NOA 45. And you find that NOA 45 does not have good canning quality. It was not bred for canning purposes. But because of the mandatory food fortification, some processors like canes, they've been trying to reduce costs by canning NOA 45, but the canning quality is not good at all. On the far right there, you see there's Cherry. Also, they've also been canning Cherry in brine. But Cherry has got very good canning qualities, but the challenge now is on the supply side. There isn't enough Cherry in the market. NOA 45, the supply is there, but the canning quality is not good at all. So how far is Zimbabwe gone with respect to the breeding of high iron beans? So there's the standard operating procedure which is available with the DRNSS, but the most common phenotyping platform for iron and zinc in Zimbabwe is the atomic absorption spectrophotometry. This is the one which is readily available to most people, and it's mostly being used when you want to screen large number of genotypes, like maybe 500 or 200 or 100. Then when you want to validate these results now, they do outsource the XRF, the X-ray fluorescence, and the ICP inductive coupled plasma spectroscope. These are mostly sourced from CIAT Rwanda and CIAT DRC. As for the ICP, they've been sourcing from the likes of Australia. But here they only send a very few samples, maybe 20 or 30, because yeah, maybe 20 or 30, just to validate the results of the atomic absorption. So this is one of the challenges when it comes to phenotyping. The equipment is not readily available. I'm sure Sakele will give an insight on the availability of the XRF from Harvest Plus. Then the first screening efforts for iron and zinc, I think they started around 2008 here in Zimbabwe. The target was 70 parts per million iron, and for zinc it was 25 to 30 parts per million. And this work mainly comprised of screening land races and release cultivars. So you find that here in Zimbabwe, we didn't release any from these first screening efforts. Why? Because most of the genotypes which were available by then, they were of the poor background color, like the small blacks, the yellows, the khakis, of which in Zimbabwe, consumers, they prefer the sugar types or the small whites. So from the first screening efforts, Zimbabwe didn't release any variety. As for the second screening efforts, the target now was 90 parts per million of iron and 35 parts per million of zinc. So several populations were developed by SEAT in Uganda, SEAT Malawi, and these populations were sent here in Zimbabwe to various programs which were willing to evaluate these nurseries. So there were the NUA lines, the NUV lines, the ECAB lines, and the CAB lines. So it was from these second screening efforts when Zimbabwe released the first biofortified bean varieties. That was CBI. In 2010, they released NOA 45, which was rich in iron and zinc, then followed by Cherry, Sweet Violet, and NOA 674. Sweet Violet and NOA 674, they are both sugar types. And also it's important to note that NOA 45 has been released in several countries in Southern Africa, I think in more than 7 countries. Then the third screening efforts now, the target has been increased to 90 parts per million iron, and so I mean the target was the same now, but now it was meant for breeding for the target segments, market segments, and also breeding for biotic and abiotic stresses, mainly trying to combine high iron and zinc content and drought tolerance as well as disease resistance. So from this was part of my PhD studies, whereby we're trying to develop high iron beans which combine good canning qualities and drought tolerance. So the population have been developed and some desirable genotypes have been identified which combine good canning quality and drought tolerance and high iron and zinc content. I'm sure CBI will be releasing these varieties in due course. Then the current iron and zinc targets. So the consensus within the bean breeding community, not just in Zimbabwe, but in Africa as well, the target for breeding is 44 parts per million iron above the commonly grown local check. For example, the commonly grown local check in Zimbabwe, when it comes to biofortification, is NOA 45. So for breeding, the target is to develop something which has got 44 parts per million above NOA 45. But for release, the target is 22 parts per million iron above the commonly grown local check. So, for example, Jasmine, which was released by CBI in 2019, the iron content was 22 parts per million above NOA 45. So Citgo also has got a one iron bean variety which is in the pipeline for release. So the consensus within the bean breeding community between SEAT and Harvest Plus is that a variety can be considered biofortified and for release if it has got 22 parts per million iron above the commonly grown local check. But I remember there was a debate on what constitutes a variety to be biofortified. So some were saying 70 parts per million iron, some were saying 100 parts per million. So this was now the concept that a variety can be considered biofortified if it has got iron content of 22 parts per million above the commonly grown local check. So I will talk about the application of biotechnology in iron and zinc improvement in Zimbabwe. So at the present moment, there's no utilization of marker-assisted selection and genomic selection. This is not just in Zimbabwe, but in the whole of Africa. So what is the progress in terms of marker-assisted selection? So 3 markers have been identified, but these, they need to be validated. Then about genomic selection, just one cycle has been done. This was done in SEAT Uganda sometime last year, and the segregating material has not yet been analyzed. So there's still a lot of work which needs to be done there. In some of the challenges which are encountered in breeding of high iron beans, There's poor access to high throughput iron and zinc phenotyping equipment. I was talking about poor access to XRIF, poor access to ICP spectrometry and the near infrared spectrometry. So this basically increases the breeding cycle when we are talking about the breeder's equation, which is not good for breeding. So it's a very big challenge there. And also the undesirable seed coat color of genotypes with high levels of iron and zinc content. We find that when it comes to beans, most of the genotypes which have got high iron and zinc content, they've got a poor background color. We're talking of the small yellows, the small blacks, or the khakis, of which here in Zimbabwe, consumers prefer the sugar types and the small whites. So it's quite a challenge there. Then there's also an association of enhanced iron content with greater polyphenols. So you find that the genotypes which have got high iron and zinc content, they tend to have also greater levels of polyphenols. Polyphenols, they are not desirable because they affect the bioavailability of iron and zinc content. However, the good part is this can be reduced during processing, such as soaking, by de-hulling and milling, as well as heat treatment. So by doing these processes, you can improve iron bioavailability by 20 to 50%. Then what are the approaches which are used in dissemination by the various stakeholders in Zimbabwe? So,
hello, Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you need to wind up a bit because of our
okay,
time.
yeah. Okay. So several approaches were used by stakeholders to improve the access to high iron beans. The likes of innovation platform approach. Several actors were also engaged to do value addition. There was also the school feeding program, which was also used to improve the dissemination. Then also the small seed break approach was also used to try and improve access to seed. Then the non-exclusivity in multiplication and marketing of high iron beans. You find that there are many companies which are marketing high iron beans, thus improving the dissemination of NOA 45. Then there's also the community-based seed production, which was used by the likes of Harvest Plus. Then these are some of the impacts which I've realized up to date. Like the adoption of NOA 45 was 2% in 2016, but by now it is around 30%. Then there's also the creation of business investment opportunities, like the increase in the number of small and medium enterprises who are now trading in high iron beans. There are many companies now who are into the high iron bean industry, creating employment opportunities as well as influencing access to quality seed. Then NOA 45 matures early, thus freeing up labor. This is important for gender. Farmers can engage in other additional revenue generating activities. This is my last section, challenges on which are faced when disseminating high iron beans. So basically there's poor branding of high iron beans by some of the entrepreneurs. One cannot tell that this is NOA 45 or this is biofortified. Even the spelling of NOA 45 sometimes is wrongly spelled. Then there's also the poor or slow acceptance of value-added products in the market, the likes of bean flour, the canned beans. Then farmers, they're also charging a premium price on NOA 45. The same applies to some of the traders. Then there's limited studies on iron bioavailability in Zimbabwe. You find that bioavailability varies by genotype, by processing method, and by market class. But most of the varieties, we need to do the bioavailability studies on the varieties which are currently available. Then lastly, we need to consider also how other foods commonly consumed with beans can affect the iron bioavailability. For example, rice and beans is not good because it lowers the bioavailability of iron. But potato plus beans is good. Yeah, so I think that was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bruce, for such an informative discussion and presentation. May I kindly ask probably one, is there a burning question? I've seen there's an XRF comment, so I'll ask Donald and Sakile to comment, but is there any other burning one or two questions before we move on? If not, probably Donald and Sakile, there's a comment because I think Bruce mentioned that there's one machine that is scarce, and in the comments you mentioned something that is available in Zimbabwe.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Dean, and good afternoon to everybody. This is Donald Mavindidze, the Regional Director for Harvest Plus. I'm based in Nairobi. Yeah, we at Harvest Plus, as you know, have been the pioneers of biofortification, and we set out to establish all these testing machinery and places where one could test both for breeding and what have you. We've got some XRF machines that are in DRC. We're working with the local NAS there. In ERA, we've got one in DRC. We've got one which is based in Rwanda. And we had one which was based in, yeah, there were two actually in Rwanda, but we've since moved the other one that was in Rwanda to Zimbabwe, in Harare, at CIMET. So it's available for everyone. Probably what might be required is to make sure that we get the reagents and other consumables that are required for that machine to start working. So it's up there for the taking for all the breeders out there. Please, let's use that equipment that is there. You can contact Sakile or Cosmos to see how that can be facilitated. And if you need to send samples to Australia, to Flinders University, I'm sure Sakile would be willing to assist you to get that done, because testing for iron and zinc is a meticulous process, and we need to make sure that there's no contamination. Otherwise, we end up classifying something that is not biofortified as being biofortified. So we really need to be careful. Most of the partners that we work with have tended to send their samples to Flinders University just to make sure that they are verified. Sakile might want to say something. Thank you very much, Dean.
Thank you. Probably, Sakile, you can type your comment. Josephine, is that a question? You can go ahead, Josephine. Oh, I think you can type your question in the chat, Josephine. Let me we can move to the to Nakai's presentation. So let me please, Bruce, can you unshare so that I can share from this side Nakai's presentation. May I also kindly ask Dumisani to mute your video so that at least you are with distracted. So Dumisani, please. Right. Yes. Can we all see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Right. So, Nakai, you can go ahead.
Okay, will you be controlling the presentation from that side?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I think for the presentation outline, I think you can skip, because I've already talked about it. Yeah, like I said, the general overview. I said that most countries in the world are consuming where maize is consumed in Africa, because I said statistics show that 16 countries where maize is consumed in Africa. And the highest consumption is in eastern parts and southern parts of Africa. And maize, an individual person can consume more than 300 grams of maize per day in southern and eastern parts of Africa. Next slide. Next slide, please. Then this map is showing the global severity of hidden hunger, which is micronutrient deficiency. Then we can see that the magnitude of hidden hunger is concentrated in, sorry, can you go back?
Is it okay?
No, the next slide. Yeah, I was talking about the global severity of hidden hunger being concentrated in the developing countries as compared to the high-income countries, and the micronutrient deficiency ranges from mild to alarmingly high in southern parts of Africa. Next slide. Then coming on to the severity of vitamin A deficiency, the World Health Organization has classified vitamin A deficiency as a public health problem because it affects about 1/3 of preschool children, with the highest rates registered in sub-Saharan Africa, where 48% of the children are affected, followed by South Asia, where 44% of the preschool children are affected. And statistics also show that more than 140 million children are at greater risk of illness due to vitamin A deficiency, including hearing loss, blindness, or even death if they are not given vitamin A supplements in time. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, Dean.
Is it okay, this one?
Yes. Then for zinc deficiency, the map is showing that more than 25% of the affected people in the world are in Africa. So we are at a greater risk of zinc deficiency than in other countries. And the symptoms for zinc deficiency include diarrhea, acute respiratory infections, as well as brain damage or stunting in children. Next slide. Then there are several strategies that have been employed to fight micronutrient deficient or nutrient deficient in general. This includes clinical supplementation, where you can just go in a pharmacy or enter a pharmacy and to buy your supplements. You can also be careful on what you eat a balanced diet, that is dietary diversification. Yeah, commercial fortification is also important. We can see that in Zimbabwe, our meal, sugar, even baby foods or even baby formula is now fortified with so many micronutrients. Then biofortification is also another intervention strategy. And this has been considered as the most sustainable and cost-effective way of curbing micronutrient deficiency because it has wide coverage. And the biofortification is targeting major crops like rice, maize, sweet potato, etc. Next slide. Then coming on to the current biofortification efforts at CIMIT and also at in the public sector. Then yes, yeah, we have been making efforts to breed for provitamin A maize, that is maize that have at least 15 parts per million of provitamin A content. Then as well as quality protein maize that is rich in tryptophan content and lysine as well. Then also high kernel zinc maize with the target harvest plus target of 33 parts per million. Then the countries shown on this picture, these are just pioneer countries where the breeding efforts are being dominated. And it's interesting or it's encouraging that we Zimbabweans, we are part of the game. Next slide. Next slide.
Yes, I've moved probably slower on your side.
Okay. What is provitamin A? What is provitamin A maize? This is maize. This is orange maize, and it is maize that naturally accumulates carotenoids, which are precursors of vitamin A or retinol. Then we have several carotenoids in maize or even in sweet potato, but some of them, they don't have the vitamin A activity. And 3 of them have vitamin A activity, including beta-carotene, beta-cryptosanthin, as well as alpha carotene. But in normal maize, there is no vitamin A activity, but in yellow maize, it has limited vitamin A activity. And you can expect something like 2 micrograms per gram of provitamin A in yellow maize. Next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, I've moved here.
Okay. Yeah, the evidence on the efficacy of provitamin A maize, several studies have demonstrated that consumption of provitamin A maize can improve the total body vitamin A stores as compared to the supplementation, or which is equivalent to the supplementation. And yeah, in developing countries, children, the visual function of the children have been improved, and also the efficient conversion from provitamin A to retinol has also been reported in several studies. Next slide. Then this is just to show the breeding scheme for provitamin A maize. I'm not going to dwell much on this graph, but what is important is that if you make pedigree starts, you need to do QA, QC in all breeding stages, as from like the initial stages to variety release and promotion. It is very important so that you release the variety that is at least 15 parts per million or 15 micrograms per gram of provitamin A content. Next slide. Then, like I said, yeah, we can start with pedigree starts, but sometimes we want to use the elite lines, and sometimes the elite lines are white or white background, which have stress tolerance, and they are well adapted to the local growing conditions. So we can do cross with using provitamin A donors into lines, white lines. Then you need to select in all stages until you get pure material. Next slide. Next slide.
Yes, I moved probably slow on your side.
Yeah, I think this is just the repetition. Yeah, that we need to self-pollinate and continue to select until we have something that is pure. Then on the released varieties, this is a lineup of the varieties that have been released by CBI, and we can see great progress in terms of provitamin A content. We started with ZS242AE, which had 9.8 micrograms per gram, but in 2019 we managed to release a variety that is surpassing the harvest plus set target of 15 parts per million. And also there is great improvement on the yield potential, because several studies of so many scientists have reported that the biofortified maize have low yield potential. But if we can get something like 12 tons per hectare, I think that is quite encouraging. Next slide.
Yes, Nakai, I've moved the slide.
Okay. I can only see the previous slide. Okay. Then on the sampling guidelines for breeders, I'm not going to talk much about this, but what you just need is you have to self-pollinate your plants, and you collect the ears without removing the husk to protect the carotenoids from degradation, because when you expose them to light, then they tend to degrade. And then You also remove the rotten kernels and you mix the sample. You mix the sub-sample to make a compost sample, and you can store it awaiting dispatch to the laboratory. Next slide, Dean.
Yes, I've moved.
I think this is the same. You can just move on to save time.
Yes, I'm now on tools for provitamin A.
Okay, I think it's coming. Then tools that we can use for carotenoid, to analyze for carotenoid content. There are several of them. We have the spectrophotometry. We can use the high performance liquid chromatography, ultra performance liquid chromatography, near infrared, as well as the Fourier transform infrared spectrophotometer, the eye check, which is also based on color reaction. And in terms of resolution, the ultra performance liquid chromatography is better for maize carotenoids because of high throughput, and as well as you can use low consumption of reagents. You can use less reagents on that. Then the NIR or near infrared spectrophotometer, you can be used for early generation material because of it has less resolution. Next slide.
Okay, I'm now on carotenoid analysis.
Next one.
Oh, I'm on the carotenoid analysis by ultra performance.
Okay, this one. Then this is a pictorial illustration of how we analyze the carotenoids. We start with sampling. I think I've already talked about it. You can grind your sample, and then you determine the moisture, you weigh, then you incubate. You can incubate, but the first step, I think, before incubation is you mix the sample with potassium hydroxide as well as BHT. Then after centrifugation, then that's when you extract your carotenoids using hexane. Then the next step is you have to evaporate the excess hexane using nitrogen in the fume hood. You resuspend it with dichloroethane, and then you inject your sample in the HPLC or UPLC, and then the integration process using the computer, and then you calculate the carotenoid content using the peak area. Next one.
Okay, I hope you are now winding up.
Coming on to quality protein maize, this is also important because we cannot afford to buy protein-rich foods, and maize have low protein content and also low protein quality. Next slide. It's a bit slowed in. I don't think it's my fault. Then the nutritional benefits of QPM, like I said, it has been demonstrated in several studies. The pigs grew 2 to 3 times faster, as well as the chicken. And for children, don't feed children with big chunks of normal maize. Just give them QPM maize. You just need 1/3 of the size, so that you provide the body with the nitrogen needs. Then the next slide. This is to show how QPM is developed. You need to manipulate 3 distinct genetic systems. The first one is the recessive opaque locus, which is the primary locus for high lysine or tryptophan content. We also need to we also need the amino acid enhancer or modifier locus, so that the O2 can be modified to confer high lysine or tryptophan. Then this last genetic system is the one that is responsible to change the soft chalk induced endosperm to vitreous endosperm. Then the recessive mutant, the recessive O2 allele is a naturally occurring variant of maize, and the presence of the O2 allele increases the non-sense protein that is the albumins, globulins, and glutenin. It lowers the same proteins. And O2 allele is also inherited in a simple recessive manner, but you also need to take note that the QPM, it only improves the protein quality, but the quantity remain unchanged. Next slide. Then I think I've already talked. I think you can just, I think this is just the same as for the provitamin A maize. I think you can move on.
Under tools for selecting for QPM seeds.
Okay, I haven't seen the slide. Okay, yeah, several tools can be used for kernel endosperm modifications. You can use the light table. For crude protein, you can use the NIR. For the tryptophan content, colorimetry methods are used using the glyoxylic acid reaction. Then the current breeding efforts for QPM, yeah, of course, we have thousands of new QPM donors at CMIT, and at CBI, we have different QPM segregating populations ranging from F2 to F4. And for releases, we have ZS261 released in 2006, ZS225 released in 2016, as well as ZS229. I think Mukushi has also released some QPM varieties. Then the grain yield potential for recent releases ranges up to 12 tons per hectare, which is comparable to the normal maize. I think you can move on to the next.
All right, current breeding efforts, high grain zinc.
Okay. Yeah, this is quite new to most breeding programs, not only in Zimbabwe or not only in the public sector, but also to non-governmental organizations like CIMIT and IITA. In my studies, we attempted to develop hybrids that are zinc enhanced by crossing the zinc donors and locally adapted normal QPM and provitamin A lines. The zinc donors, we got them from Mexico, and the hybrids were grown under optimum low N, low nitrogen and drought conditions. Next slide.
Preliminary results.
From our preliminary results, yeah, because we also did the soil analysis part, we also discovered that the soil, most soils in Zimbabwe are zinc deficient. So if we are going to grow, or if we are going to obtain hybrids with high zinc content, we can employ other agronomic strategies such as zinc fertilization. Then on the nutritional groups, we also found that the zinc times QPM hybrids had higher micronutrient content than zinc times Pro A or zinc times normal or even checks. Then highest grain zinc was observed on hybrids under optimum condition as compared to low N and drought condition. You can move to the next.
Preliminary results continued.
Okay. Then we also found that grain zinc was positively correlated with the grain iron, and the correlation was significant. Then this, yeah, gives us the possibility of improving the nutrients simultaneously. But grain zinc was negatively correlated with the grain yield, showing dilution effects. Yeah, but the magnitude of the correlation was, yeah, was moderate, showing that we can develop hybrids that have high zinc as well, high zinc as well as high yield potential, or average to above average grain yield potential.
Sampling guidance for zinc analysis.
Yes, I think, yeah, this is just similar to the bean presentation. We also use the XRF, the ICP. Then we can also use the wet chemical procedure where you, where you grind the sample and then you dry ash sheet using concentrated diluted nitric acid. Yeah, I think you can move on to the next slide. Then, yeah, we need to do more, on breeding for zinc-rich maize, because the countries or the region where the varieties have been released is only in Latin America. I think about 1 or 2 varieties have been released in Guatemala, Panama, and Colombia. Yeah, we need to do more on that.
Opportunities.
Then for opportunities, like I said, that the QPM genotypes had higher zinc content than any other nutritional type. So this gives us the opportunity of combining nutritional traits. Then we can also use the white backgrounds to improve the yield potential as well as stress tolerance. Then, yeah, we need to do more on promotion, especially the QPM part. I think I've already talked about it. I think you can, but sorry, Dean. You can remain on this slide. Then on opportunities, then we see that the progress so far shows the bright future for biofortified maize. Then we now have competitive and higher yielding QPM and as well as provitamin A varieties. They are now released in Zimbabwe, and increasing demand of provitamin A maize by seed companies as well as farmers. Then, yeah, but like I said, QPM needs more promotion. Then processing companies are also showing interest in using provitamin A's to make cereals and baby foods.
Opportunities
we
continue.
can also take advantage of the government input scheme for seed delivery. Then we can also target we can also create more demand by targeting school children. We can also reach out to farmers with promotional material. You can move to the next slide.
Okay, I'm now promoting biofortified maize.
Okay.
Yes.
Then, yeah, the promotion of provitamin A maize has been successful because several strategies have been employed in promotion, like field days, use of regalia, and also partner open days as well as on-farm trials. Then, yeah, this is just to show the brands for provitamin A maize. You can move on.
Seed marketing.
Yes, some of the seed companies here in Zimbabwe have embraced the production of provitamin A maize or multiplication of provitamin A maize, like ZS242A is marketed by Prime Seedco, ZS244A is marketed with Mukushi. So I think this is encouraging. Next slide.
Challenges.
It's coming slowly.
Okay, yeah.
Then the challenges, slow adoption rate of biofortified maize varieties. QA, QC is very expensive, like what Bruce has said. Then there's negative perception of biofortified maize. Marker assisted selection is still very expensive for most NAS. Yeah, this is used to track the presence of the desired alleles like carotenoid B1 or O2 or even major QTLs for high kernel zinc concentration. And yeah, farmers sometimes complain of more land for isolation distances. You can move on.
Take-home
Then
message.
the take-home message, this is my last slide. There is bright future for biofortified maize. And although QPM has great potential to alleviate protein malnutrition, but it needs promotion. Then the new genetics allows for the development of high-yielding biofortified varieties. We breeders and all scientists, we need to spread the gospel about biofortified maize for us to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nakai. I think there's some discussions going on in the chat, so we'll come back to the chats. Let me take this opportunity to move to the next presentation by Dr. Godwill Makunde on sweet potato research in Zimbabwe, a case of orange-fleshed sweet potato and other nutrients dense groups. So Dr. Makunde, is he there? I'm sure is now, yeah, the slides are coming. So Dr. Makunde is a sweet potato breeder with International Potato Center based in Maputo, Mozambique, previously a bean breeder with CBI. His research interests include crop breeding, seed system technology transfer, and amelioration of value chains for income generation and improvement of livelihoods. Thank you. You can put it in presentation mode and you can shoot. Thank you. Hello? Seems there's a connection glitch. Yes, the slides are there now.
Hello, Dean.
Yes, you can go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay, So can you see my presentation? Because I don't know what happened. I just lost my connection a minute ago.
Okay. It's there, but there's a screen. I'm sure you tried to admit someone, so at times it causes that.
Yeah, because there's a problem here. It's always someone waiting on the lobby on my screen. Eh?
No, so don't admit them. Allow other people to admit, because if you do that, at times it creates a lag. So yes, now you put it in presentation mode and then you go ahead.
Yeah, I can see it in the. Is it in the presentation mode?
Yes, it's fine. You can shoot now.
Okay, I think it's moving. Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be part of the presenting team in this discussion of nutrition in Zimbabwe. So I would like to thank the executive of ZPBA for organizing such a wonderful discussion forum. And I would also like to thank Harvest Plus. I see in our midst there is a presence of Donald and Sakile from Harvest Plus for providing the platform for micronutrient research in Africa and in the whole world. I would like to thank them. And also, I really liked when Donald gave a comment to say that we have the equipment in Harare, and it's open to all the breeders and everyone who can utilize the equipment. And my warmest regards also goes to my friend Xavier Miguel. I think I last saw him in 2019, and I see him again in this presentation. So my name is Godwill Makunde. I'm a sweet potato breeder, actually based in Maputo. And we don't really have a project running in Zimbabwe, but some 2 years ago, we just had some funding for 6 months. So we thought it was going to be wise to invest it in Zimbabwe, especially in the terms of sweet potato research. So to just open this discussion, I would really like to share with some of you, maybe some did not know that there was a launch of orange forest sweet potato in Zimbabwe this year in April. And these efforts again were led by Harvest Plus and some partners. So, and in their discussion, they were actually looking at the sustainable development goals. They were trying to answer some of the issues raised in those goals. And today I will just zero in on goal number 2, which is zero hunger. We need to end the hunger and achieve. And I think most of these things have been said by Yvonne. She was talking of those women, pregnant women with anemia and also deficient in iron. There is standardness in our population. So the statistics are there. You can check them and see them in literature. But I was fascinated by one report which I saw from the Zimbabwe National Nutrition Survey, which was done in 2018, where they tried to tease out the causes of malnutrition in Zimbabwe. And one of the underlying causes there was food security and the quality of our crop products. This is also part of the reasons why we have malnutrition in our countries. And also there is another thing also mentioned there to do with the institutions. Our institutions are moving very slow in terms of addressing these problems. And sometimes they also work in silos and not achieving the. So this report got me so interested, and I find some interesting points there. And in this report, of course, it's slightly old, but it's telling us only 6% from those households which were surveyed in Zimbabwe were aware of biofortified crops. And if you look the journey of biofortification in Zimbabwe breeding programs, I think it started in the late 90s. And from 2000 until 2018, only 6% of the households which were surveyed actually knew about biofortification in crops.
Yes,
So,
come in. You can come back.
That was nice.
So this one, I think we need to take this issue very seriously. Maybe now is 10% because of other efforts put from 2019 and until now by different organizations. And there was also a trend, a worrisome trend there. Some indicators like underweight, wasting, and overweight, they were decreasing from 1988 to 2018. But standingness is still high. And I think there was a figure here presented by Yvonne to say we need to decrease the deficiency of iron in our population from 28 to 13%. Even 13% is still high. So we need to really focus on our efforts. So there was also one slide there which was talking about consumption of vitamin-rich crops, vitamin A-rich crops. And it was quite disturbing to see that quite a low number of people actually consume these vitamin A-rich crops. And sometimes people don't know the sources of vitamin A, but I think with the awareness creation, we can tell our population. The same thing also happened to iron. Quite a low number of people consume the iron-rich foods in the surveyed areas. So this was just a background information to see where we are as a nation. So in 2019, as SIP, when we got that fund for 6 months, we managed to assemble, just to bring together some released varieties which were high in beta-carotene, and some also were high in anthocyanin, those which are in purple. So the initial stage was to select the best 20 materials from the Mozambique breeding population so that we could do adaptation trials and possible release in Zimbabwe. So those varieties have got some characteristics associated with them. First, we also need the high dry matter. Like most people are also talking about the end user. The people need something which is taste. So we're considering high dry matter, the beta-carotene content, and the anthocyanin levels in those materials. So it was a composition of diverse group of materials. And even the white clones were also among them, because we think there are some important nutrients which are in them, but of course not beta carotene, but they can contain iron, zinc, and other nutrients. So we managed to, together with the DR and SS, we managed to establish some trials at Baby, Marondera, Rosemary, Makoholi, Sai Valley, and Panmure, 6 research institutes in Zimbabwe. So the idea, and those who know sweet potato, it's also difficult to produce planting material. So these 6 locations were enough, especially during the first year of experimentation. And again, we also decided to enrich. Of course, most of you know that there's no research program, there's no breeding program for sweet potato in Harare. So one of our focus was also to train people in CBI and staff again in HRC, Horticulture Research Center, on how to manage sweet potato populations and how to make selections out of those populations. So we managed to introduce quite a number of germplasm. The first population consisted of 3,000 seedlings. And these were mainly orange-fleshed clones, but also high in iron. And I saw there was a question here to say, is iron and zinc correlated? In sweet potato, especially the OFS group, the orange-fleshed group, the correlations are high between iron and zinc, and they can actually go to 75%. So we are killing 3 birds with 1 stone, the orange, the iron, and the zinc in that population. So the second population had 200 seedlings, and this was also a high dry matter population, orange in color, and also very good in terms of climate resilience. And lastly, the third population had 1,000 seedlings, purple-fleshed. And in all these 3 populations, if you make selections, it's a wide range of a mixture of colors. Some could be orange purple, cream orange. It's a combination. So we wanted to transfer that capacity to the national program in Zimbabwe. And this, we're using the botanical seeds, so small, so we're also training them on how to scarify and manage nurseries. So our idea, or our main idea, was to deliver improved sweet potato varieties in Zimbabwe and also find ways of delivering them to farmers. So you'd find during this effort, for those 20 elite clones, we also had an opportunity to work with Harvest Plus and their partners to actually do on-farm trials in different areas of Zimbabwe. And I think Sakile will just give us an insight on that. So our idea is to deliver these materials to farmers, but we need to do it in a proper way. We need to just release the varieties and make sure that these are, of course, in both formal and informal seed systems, but as released varieties. So I just try to give what we are trying to achieve, to say we want to achieve a genetic gain. So as a baseline at the moment, in terms of beta carotene, we can actually say most of the varieties which are grown in Zimbabwe have no beta carotene. So our benchmark for beta carotene was 0. But in 2 years' time, if we manage to release a variety this year, I hope there are efforts to do that. In 2 years' time from now, we should be able to release better varieties than what we are going to do this year. So our focus is improving nutrition quality and combine it with the climate resilience. We want to increase the yield in terms of storage root yield, and also the foliage yield is quite important because some communities actually eat the leaves of sweet potato. And we are considering the end user trades in all our work. And one thing which we also discovered during that time is that we need to keep very strong collaborations among the institutions, among the partners. This is going to make us go far if we just employ that strategy. So to just give you some of the few results, we just started in 2019, and last year we also had some trials. So I will just report on 2019 results. And I would just like to say, for all our trials, we did not put fertilizer. We were not putting the fertilizer. And on the top, you can see results from the 6 locations which we conducted our trials in 2019. And below, this is just a summary. I got this information from, I think it was from one document, which is trying to tell us the productivity of sweet potato in different provinces of Zimbabwe. So if you can see, for example, I'll just take Masvingo. In 2018, it had an average production of 5 tons per hectare for sweet potato. And this actually can relate to Makoholi crop productivity unit, which is in Masvingo. And for me, this value of Makoholi, I was very impressed with by getting 6 tons per hectare, because it only rained once. That was January 2020, actually, January 2020. And we planted the trial. And at the end, the trial only received about 73 millimeters of rainfall from establishment until harvesting. So, and this is an average. You could find some clones at an average yield of 10 to 11 tons per hectare under such harsh conditions. And Makoholi, I think there's also poor nutrition, soil nutrition. So I was impressed with that, with that kind of yield. So this is just to give you what happened during that year. But just to answer some of the questions which were raised here in terms of bioavailability studies and how nutrients are taken by the human body. In 2018, we identified one of our clones here in Mozambique, which was quite high in iron. It had 44 parts per million, which is actually even higher than common bean. And it was deep orange. I think it is 33 parts per million for beta carotene. And the zinc levels were also very high. So we did a bioavailability study, but of course we could not do it here in Mozambique because of delays in approval for the ethical reasons. So we took it to Malawi, and they did the study, the bioavailability study with women and the teenage girls.
So I hope you are winding up. Hello, Dr. Makonde, I hope you are winding up now.
Yes, this is the last. So the finding which the finding there was the people with low levels of iron in their body actually had higher absorption of iron. And if you want to enhance the absorption of iron and zinc in human beings, you also need to increase the vitamin C content, and you need to lower the phytate content in the product. And like I think someone here commented to say, polyphenols are very bad in terms of iron absorption in humans. Okay, I think this is my last slide. This is just to do with the high throughput phenotyping. And I actually had a question to the previous presenters to say, how many of you know the equipment which you were discussing about, talking about, you were presenting of the NIRIs, you were presenting of many other equipment. So these are the basics which we need in Zimbabwe so that we take our work in terms of nutrition to another level. So we just use basic tools like the NIRIs to measure the beta. Of course, the NIRIs, you can do a lot with this because you can calibrate it actually to measure beta carotene, measure micronutrients like magnesium, calcium, and also it can give you simple sugars. The protein, it will give you in just one read. So we need such simple equipment, high throughput, because we are working with high populations, high throughput. And also to everyone was talking of end user, we need to also have high throughput equipment like a texture analyzer, the DGI, so that at the end, our selection program is accurate and also efficient. By that, we are increasing the genetic gain is part of the equation. So we are increasing that. So now I'm very happy to hear that we have the XRF machine at CIMIT. This is quite good because it's going to help us in our selection program and improving our accuracy and efficiency in the breeding program. So the last slide, I think this I already said, to say there is high correlation between iron and zinc in orange flesh sweet potato. It can go up to 75%. We need the high throughput platforms in Zimbabwe. We also need the conducive policy environment to allow us to do our work in terms of sweet potato. And one thing which I saw, which was lacking even in the previous two presentations, which I think is a very big gap, is the issue of agronomy. I think with better agronomy, we are also enhancing the uptake of these macronutrients into our crop. And at the end, I think even the levels will be even higher in the final product. So we need to just address that, maybe work with the agronomy institutions and so on. And this one is just, you just need 150 grams of OFSP. It's just one root, one small root. For a child who is less than 5 years, this is enough for him to just get the beta carotene, the vitamin A. Thank you very much. This is part of the story. It's just a part for 10 minutes, and I think Sakila is also going to give us an update on what happened on the on-farm trials. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Makunte, for that. Now, because of time, we'll push the discussions to the end of the session. So let me take this opportunity to invite my sister Wendy Mazura to give us some insights on scaling and impact of nutritious varieties in Zimbabwe. Wendy is a passionate extension agronomist serving the farming community for increased crop productivity, profitability, and nutrition security in an environmentally sustainable way. Farm visits and farmer engagements are the highlights of your day. Wendy, yes, I can see your slides coming. Thank you so much. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Dean. Is it on slideshow now?
Not yet, but you can put it now.
Thank you. I'd just like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of this meeting. A timeless meeting indeed. Thank you so much for the powerful panel that has just presented before me. And just to assure you, Dean, that I will not spin out of my time, as I am well aware that this is not a field day. So I'll try to stick to the time that I was allocated. So the presentation layout is as follows. I'll start with an introduction, a brief introduction. Suffice to say that most of the introductory remarks have been given already, and we've heard in great depth and with a lot of new words to take home some of the strides that have been made in biofortification. So I will also not dwell on that. Then biofortification at a glance, before we move on to look at some of the milestones, just a few of them that have been achieved. We'll then highlight the pillars of agriculture, which are then going to enable us to unlock the genetic potential out of these biofortified crops that we've been hearing about this afternoon. We'll then look at the benefits of biofortification across the value chain, and then the adoption and dissemination strategies before we move on to look at upscaling, adoption, and then we'll wind up by giving a summary. So in Zimbabwe must shift its focus from generalized crop production to foods that are biofortified and high in nutrients if the country is to have a healthier population. Just to give an example of the 2019-2020 farming season, where Mashonaland...
Sorry,
Yes,
Wendy.
Dean?
The slides are not changing. Probably you can unshare and reach. Yes, they are not moving.
They are not. Okay.
They're still on the same slide.
All right, let me stop sharing and share again.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you see the slides now?
They're coming up, yeah. Yes, it's there. So try and put in presentation mode.
Okay. Let me just move one slide. Is it moving now?
No, not yet. From your angle, it's coming. I don't know. Probably those that can see the slides moving, you can raise your hands.
They're not moving, then.
They are not moving.
They're not.
Are they moving now?
Yes, they are now moving. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Now.
So
yeah.
If you may allow me to just present without putting the slideshow.
Yeah. It's okay.
So I'd given the introduction. Then now I was just summarizing and giving an example situation that happened in the 2019-2020 farming season in Mashonaland Central, where they managed to achieve a very high yield level in terms of the cereals that were produced in that province in that season. However, they managed nutrition in terms of the women and children in that province as well, which is to say that it is not always the case that high productivity is associated with high nutrients and high nutrition produced in terms of the food that the people are going to be consuming. So we want to move outside of that notion of just wanting to increase productivity and not coming in with the qualitative aspects of food production that speak to issues to do with nutrition and yes, the topical issue that we are discussing today, the biofortification of crops in a bid to increase the health security so that it moves hand in glove with the food security aspect that we want to achieve. So there is a gap in, there's a need for innovative ways of sharing and use of this information of biofortification that we have been given today. and there is a need for us to focus our knowledge as well as the stakeholders to participate in a more inclusive way for us to come up with a more holistic approach towards the acceleration of the uptake of biofortification. Then the biofortification at a glance, we find that micronutrient deficiencies, which are the hidden hunger we were hearing about by the earlier presenters, can result in stunting, blindness, mental retardation. The list is quite long, but we would just like to highlight that with biofortification, we can be able to get an intervention that is designed to increase the content of key nutrients in crops through breeding efforts, and then it will help us to alleviate the hidden hunger aspect. So biofortification provides a solution for global micronutrient deficiencies through consumption of crops rich in essential micronutrients. So just to give a brief history of the biofortification process, a more detailed history has been given by the first presenters, but you find that the provitamin A, yellow or orange maize varieties that have been released so far, we have ZS 242, which whose uptake has increased significantly over the years. And we are seeing that as CITCO, we also have SC 510 and SC 610, which were released in Nigeria. And we also have the orange-fleshed sweet potatoes, which were launched as a country, a great stride when it was launched this year by the Harvest Plus, and the key players, we include the Agronomy Institute. So that was a great stride in the right direction that we saw. Then we have also seen that high iron and zinc beans like NOAA 45, quite topical, the issue of NOAA 45 nowadays, which is to say, in terms of its marketing, in terms of its extension activities that were done, they were done well. And it's quite commendable that now almost everyone has an appreciation of the existence of this bean variety. They might not know the benefits that they are getting out of them, but yes, the awareness has been done. But we still feel that there is more that can be done from an agronomy and extension perspective. Then in terms of high protein, soya bean, grain, vegetable sorghum, then there are some other crops that are also being biofortified, include cassava, as well as some other vegetable crops that are also being biofortified. So in terms of the biofortified and nutritious crops, those are the examples, and those are the ones that we are speaking at great length about today, where we have the orange-fleshed sweet potatoes, the high iron sugar bean, and the orange maize. Then in terms of looking at biofortification milestones, looking at the bigger picture, it is said that 2 billion people, primarily in low and middle income countries, do not get enough essential vitamins and minerals, micronutrients in their daily diets. So the commercialization of biofortified crops by CBC program was launched in 2019 to address the widespread hidden hunger in Africa and Asia. And suffice to say that this was not the only initiative. From what we have heard today, a lot of strides have been made by the different stakeholders that we are seeing outlined there on the slide at the bottom page of that slide there. So we are getting a lot of interest in terms of participation in this great revolution of the introduction of biofortification in Africa and in Zimbabwe per se. South Africa, the consumer acceptability of the orange-fleshed sweet potato and pro-vitamin A biofortified maize were amongst children compared to adults. And this in case with the children preferred because of the sweet taste that comes with the orange maize varieties, compared to the adults who preferred to have the pap or the sadza, which the taste to them was a bit was not appealing. So there is a need for us to also look at coming up with biofortified crops that have that do not present a particular unique taste, so that the uptake also amplified. Then in terms of the biofortification milestones in Zimbabwe, again, it has been spoken about to great lengths, and there are a lot of strides that have been made. And in Zimbabwe, some farmers have been growing vitamin A-rich maize and zinc-fortified beans. The biofortified crop production and consumption uptake are low due to the unavailability of biofortified seeds, and there is a perceived perception that some of them might be low yielding. For example, the ZS242, which in some instances under poor management, it may result in very small sized cobs. But in some instances, there is an ability for it to have multiple cobs. So it is a compensatory effect in terms of its productivity. And
We've lost Wendy. I'm sure there's a network glitch. Hello, Wendy. Hello, Wendy. Your mic is on mute. I think we can't hear you. Yeah, I think.
hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. You were on mute. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but you could hear me for part of the presentation.
Yes, I think you're on slide number 7 or so.
All right, thank you. I won't take much of your time. Let me just continue with the presentation. So I was just highlighting the pillars of agriculture that we need to merge for us to be able to realize the full potential of these biofortified crops, because they also fall into the bracket of agriculture, and we need to increase productivity in the same way that we are employing the good agronomic practices for the other crops. We also need to cascade it to the biofortified crops as well. So in terms of access to good genetics, we have heard here at great lengths, and we've even seen some exceptional technologies that have been adopted and machinery that we have in our country in a bid to upscale the access to good genetics, in this case, looking at biofortified genetics. So in terms of the access to finance and stakeholders involvement, we are seeing that there is a general interest in terms of the adoption of biofortified crops, but there is a need for us to amplify these efforts so that we make sure that we do not leave any stone unturned, and we are able to reach the farmer at the most remote areas for them to understand these benefits that we are selling. And then just to amplify the access to extension, yes, we do acknowledge the efforts that have been made by Harvest Plus and the other key stakeholders who have been involved in access to extension and awareness building campaigns, but there is still more that can be done for us to send the message home to the end user for them to fully appreciate, because adoption is also a function of clear understanding of the roadmap and the attributes and benefits and solutions that are going to be achieved because of the adoption of the new innovative technology. Then just to look at the benefits of biofortification. Biofortification has benefits across the value chain, from the farmer, the community, the country, and the industry as a whole. For the farmer, biofortification can bring about an increased yield level, which then speaks to increased productivity, particularly if good agronomic practices are employed. Then it also produces deep-seated kernels, which are attractive, and they can fit into different news where you can find them being used as green mealy crops as well as for grain. And we also find that it is quite nutritious for us to incorporate biofortification in our breeding efforts and also to upscale its uptake. In terms of profitability, if we are going to yield more, then it speaks to issues to do with profitability, particularly if the production matrix is managed well and the factors that need to be kept at a minimum in terms of cost management are also taken into account. We find that profitability is also something that can be realized by our farmers. Just to give an example on profitability, in the 2018 season, when ZS 242 came on board under the wing of Prime Seeds, which is a seedco entity, we found that there was, at some time, we recorded yields of 12.6 tons per hectare at Glenara Estates in Mazowe, in Mashonaland Central, which is to say that this is possible. It can be achieved. If we can achieve this yield, it means that the farmers in their own capacity cannot achieve can achieve yields of within the ranges of 6 to around 9 tons per hectare under optimum management. So this is something that should be encouraging for us, and it's something that we should also, a message that we should carry forward for us to onboard some new farmers on this technology of biofortification and the growth of orange maize varieties, as well as the high iron bean varieties. And for the community, the biofortification process results in improved health, improved livelihoods, and as well as employment creation across the value chain. And this speaks to the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly goal number 1 and number 2, which speak to poverty alleviation and zero hunger, as well as the integration of all the SDGs, which is SDG number 17, which is to say that if we are able to integrate all the SDGs, we are able to achieve our goal of attaining this Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Then in terms of the country's benefits,
Thanks.
the country...
Wendy, kindly wind up. Yeah, we're seriously running out of time. Eh?
All right. No, I think I'm left with about 2 slides. So in terms of the country, the country will also benefit in terms of its economic growth. There will be increased exports and the economy will be on a recovery trajectory. In terms of the industry, employment creation, as well as a wider range of products that can be produced from the industry, it's something that we can also look at. Then the adoption of biofortified crops, just look at the SWOT analysis, some of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, they've been mentioned before. But just to mention that on the strength, there is a supportive policy framework that has been drafted in terms of from the government's perspective, though we still need in terms of the weaknesses to include biofortification in our government programs so that there is a faster uptake, and those farmers who are unable to purchase their own seed are also able to learn the benefits and experience the nutritional value of these crops through programs that are meant to mitigate the cost of production. Then in terms of looking at the crops on a one-on-one, how are we going to increase this biofortification, the upscaling concept? By breeding efforts which are needed to improve taste qualities of biofortified crops to enhance acceptability, as well as value addition to diversify forms in which these foods can be taken. I know there are strides that have been made, but we still feel that there is more that can be done. Then the development of local and export markets can stimulate internal production and consumption and enhanced funding of private and public players in the biofortification crop value chain, as well as premium pricing for biofortified products or subsidized pricing, so to say, so that there is an attractiveness to the product. And once this is done, even seed production will be able to meet the demand, because currently demand is not sufficient for the seed production to be amplified. So once demand is there, seed production will also follow. So those are just the highlights of how we can upscale the uptake of the different crops, from the orange fleshed to the biofortified maize and the high iron bean, as well as to introduce other biofortified crops that have been included there. Just to mention that we need to do demonstration plots with our farmers, because this will also encourage a look and learn approach for them to fully appreciate the concept of biofortification and to demystify issues to do with low productivity of these crops. So the summary just also highlights what everyone has been saying, that it's time for us to take this and amplify its efforts by increasing its implementation and uptake by the end user, because so much has been done in terms of the research, so much has been done in terms of trying to build the awareness, but it's now a time for us to act. It's a time for us to really put our hands on the deck and make this machine move forward in terms of the next level. So on that note, I would just like to end by quoting the words of the two-time president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akunume Adesina, who said, and I quote, "Biofortified crops are going to be game changers with dealing with the issue of malnutrition in our world today." So he's not only looking at an African perspective, he's looking at the whole globe in terms of dealing with malnutrition. So biofortification is a good thing for us to take on, and we are on the right trajectory. We just need to amplify our efforts and work together so that we collectively we can achieve something fruitful and something concrete, so that the end user can appreciate the benefits that come with biofortification. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much. Let me go to the last presentation for this session because of time. And I can see a lot of discussions going on in the chat. Let's continue having the discussions. Thanks to from CIMIT, there is Natalia. Thank you so much. I can see you are responding. So let me invite Sakile to discuss the demand for nutrient-dense crops, lessons from the experiences of Harvest Plus in Zimbabwe. Sakile Kudita is the country manager.
I think we lost Dean, but in the meantime, Sakila, please go ahead. Hello, Sakila.
Goodness me. Hello, can
Hello,
you hear me now?
Sakila, please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to talk about the demand for nutrient-dense crops, building up from what everybody else has said. I'll try my best to be as quick as I can. Okay. Okay, this is basically just the background about micronutrient malnutrition in Zimbabwe, which has basically been given by Yvonne in her first, when she made her keynote address, the fact that we have a problem in the country. And the problem is that of micronutrient malnutrition, with up to 72% of children suffering from iron deficiency. These are children under the age of 5. 19% of them have vitamin A deficiency, while stunting in the country is currently at 26%. So that's basically a big problem that we have. And we know that the consequences of vitamin A deficiency include impaired vision. We know that vitamin A deficiency is the leading cause of preventable blindness in children. We know that vitamin A is important for a healthy immune system, and therefore children who have vitamin A deficiency are likely to fall sick or severely ill from common childhood ailments. That's why it's a problem. So in fact, 25% vitamin A deficiency increases the risk of children dying from common ailments by up to 25%. We also know that iron is important for brain development, especially during the formative years of an infant, from the time they're in their mother's womb to the first, until they're about 2 years old. So when a child has iron deficiency, they have impaired brain development and reduced cognitive abilities, which means they have difficulties in learning. And it also causes unfavorable pregnancy outcomes in women, which include low birth weight or even maternal deaths due to hemorrhages. Okay, and iron deficiency is also the leading cause of anemia. So the strategies for tackling vitamin A deficiency, iron deficiency, and all the other micronutrient malnutrition have been elaborated by Nakai. And among those, I just wanted to highlight the biofortification, which is what we are going to talk about today. The most important thing is to know that biofortification cannot stand alone. So it does not discount the need for supplementation, the need for industrial fortification, neither does it discount the need for promoting dietary diversity. Okay, so for biofortification to be successful, Wendy did mention a few of the key success factors, and so did the previous presenters. And some of the key questions that had to be answered that had a positive response were, can conventional breeding add extra nutrients without reducing yields? Because farmers do need to have their yields preserved, and the answer was yes. And when consumed, can the increase in make a significant impact on human nutrition? Again, the answer was yes. Are farmers willing to grow and are consumers willing to eat biofortified crops? The answer is yes. Will the demand be high enough to drive sustainable integration of the biofortified varieties into the food system? This is what I want to talk about today. Yes, it can be high enough, but it does take a bit of effort from everyone involved for the biofortified crops to be fully integrated into the system. These are some of the barriers that we find as we promote biofortified crops. Firstly, micronutrient malnutrition itself is a type of hidden hunger. That's what it's called, because it's a situation where people feel full, they've eaten enough food in terms of volume, and so they may not see the need to worry about quality of the food they eat. Another possible barrier is the competition with familiar varieties, because remember, especially when we talk of vitamin A maize and iron beans, sorry, I just want to put a pointer. Okay, fine. We have a color change. We are used to the white maize, but then we are now finding ourselves with the orange maize. We are used to the white sweet potatoes in the country. Now we have to deal with orange sweet potatoes. It's the same story also with beans.
Hello, Sakile, are you there? Hello, Sakile, are you there? Okay, we seem to have lost Sakile. Can anyone still hear her, or is only my machine?
Yes, we can't hear her.
She's lost.
Sakile, yeah, my apologies. My computer just switched off and got dropped, I think, for a few minutes.
Okay, Dean, let us go to the discussion and ask Toko to lead that whilst we try to get hold of Sakile for her to continue. I think that there are a few interesting things that were on the chat that maybe Toko can lead and clarify whilst we are waiting for Sakile. Toko, would you like to do that?
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the presenters for very insightful presentations, which really show us that we have a future in biofortification. I think there are some of the questions that were asked in the chat, and they were being addressed as we're going on. But I would just want there was a question that I think would address to the management for ZPBA. Someone was asking if we are going to talk about biofortification of small grains. I think maybe we can consider this for the future presentations, as it was not included in this one. And I was also happy from Wendy's presentation, where she indicated that we need to marry productivity with quality so that we alleviate food and nutrition security at the same time. So I don't know if people have other burning questions which need to be addressed. I think we had a question from Ms. Nyakanda, which was saying, what can be done to ensure the consumer enjoys the benefits of biofortification in the plate? How do consumers know they are buying the real biofortified product? Maybe we can open this to discussion. How do people know they are eating the biofortified food, the real biofortified food? I can see Sakile is back now. Dean, can we go back to Sakile's presentation?
Yes, I think Sakile can go, but I think as we do that, probably Bruce and Nakai and Godwin can prepare, responses for the question that you just highlighted. Thank you so much. Okay. Sakile, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My apologies, we had a power cut, but we're back on now thanks to backup power. I hope I'm clear, Dean.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Thanks. So I was talking about the possible barriers to the adoption of biofortified crops. I'd spoken about the competition with familiar varieties. It was also the case when we had to deal with the promoting NUA 45 because people were used to the red speckled being the Gloria type. So NUA 45 was a different type of color which we had to promote. So then there's also some prejudices that we have to deal with against biofortified crops and some preconceptions, some of them which include the misconception that they are GMOs, which is not true. But of course, with the education and a lot of promotion and awareness building, that was cleared. The private sector reluctance to invest in new biofortified crops, in new varieties could be another barrier. Due to perhaps risk aversion, or they have an existing cash cow that they are currently milking and probably don't see the need to invest in a new product and go through the product life cycle from the beginning. And also the supply chain jitters or the problem with trying to deal with the supply chain of a new variety. So, okay, so this is what we did then. I want to share with you our experiences, the actual experiences that we had under the Livelihood and Food Security Program, which ran from 2015 to date on promoting biofortified varieties in the country. The program piloted this promotion in 12 districts in the country, which are shown on the map there. And it was funded by UK Aid, and we worked with the government of Zimbabwe. It was managed by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, working with a lot of NGO partners that include Practical Action, WHH, and World Vision, with Harvest Plus as the strategic partner on lead on biofortification. Okay, so what strategy do we have? We worked throughout the value chain for biofortified crops, looking at number one, awareness building. This was done through nutrition education, nutrition behavior change communication, whereby we trained farmers on the importance of micronutrients, the importance of them consuming a diverse diet that includes micronutrient-rich foods, the importance of vitamin A, iron, and zinc in their diets, and in the diets of their children and the women of childbearing age. And this was done through proper conventional farmer training, through mass media, through edutainment, that is road shows, dramas, through peer education, which include the use of care groups and community-based mobilizers or facilitators. That's farmer-to-farmer training. We also did agronomy training because, as Wendy already rightfully said, it's not enough to just grow the crop. Farmers need to get optimal yields. So the training was accompanied with a lot of agronomy training. We also did experiential marketing. These were new varieties, especially the orange maize. So we gave farmers an opportunity to see them in their field through demo plots, to evaluate them through PVA trials, and this was done with the OFSP as well. Through test packs, we did tasting fairs, exhibitions, cooking demos, so farmers really taste and eat and see if they like the tests. We also had to worry about the market because the lack of a market can be a disincentive for adoption of any new variety. So market linkages were developed to help farmers to be able to sell their surpluses. The strategy also included encouraging private sector participation in the biofortified crop value chain. The private sector here includes the seed companies, and the processors and aggregators. And we did this by providing pilot grain for potential processors, parent seed for seed companies, market guarantees. This is just to de-risk the companies who were a bit reluctant to invest in biofortified crops because they're not too sure if they were going to sell everything they produced. And we also provided marketing support. We realized that it was going to be a heavy marketing burden for the private sector to promote their biofortified crops. So as much as we could, we supported them in terms of promotional activities and also some aggregation support. So the interventions basically went right through the value chain, including supporting research through validation, providing validation support for micronutrient levels, and I think I've already spoken about the other portions of the value chain. And of course, policy is key. So I'll share with you results of a survey that was done in 2019 by FAO under the LFSP to look at then what has become of biofortified crops, at least where we're working, which is the pilot districts. And we saw that more than 50% of the farmers were now growing both vitamin A's and vitamin A maize and iron beans. In fact, in some places like in Gurube and Shurugwi, we saw more than 80%, up to 80%, 84% of farmers in those districts were now growing biofortified varieties. Okay, and also in the same survey, we tried to find out what were the major motivators for the adoption of biofortified crops by those who grew them. And we discovered that the major driver of adoption was the health benefits and the nutrition benefits. So it turns out everybody does want to eat healthy, and given the opportunity to eat healthy without too much extra cost because we're dealing with biofortified cereals, we found that the adoption was high. So 83% adopted them due to the nutritional benefits, although a few were just growing them because the seed was free. That's 5%. 6% like the higher yields of the biofortified varieties, and 4% like the drought tolerance of the biofortified varieties. But some of the experiences that I would like to share also from promoting biofortified varieties under the program that I spoke about were the importance of the government support. Farmers reported that their most reliable source of information on biofortified varieties was Agritex, which is the government extension department. So government support was key, especially Agritex, in the adoption of biofortified varieties. And also Zimbabwe is a very conducive policy environment to biofortified varieties. We see that biofortified crops are included in many key policies and strategies, and it's also part of this food fortification strategy, for example, among many others. The private sector participation was also key because we needed the seed to get to the farmers. So seed companies came in and they played a very important role. And we also needed farmers to have an output market for the seed that they produce, for the grain, surplus grain that they produce, and the processors came in through for them. So we also, something worth noting is that of the private sectors that came in, SMEs seem to be more more critical, especially during the initial phases, with the larger companies coming in also later on. But during the initial stages, SMEs play a key role. NGOs, CG centers, UN agencies, the yield preservation due to the biofortification process itself was also key. Farmers were encouraged to adopt by the fact that they did not lose much in terms of their yield. Market development already mentioned, and also I want to emphasize here that the biofortified varieties had other advantages that were encouraged adoption. The fast cooking, that was of the iron bean, especially the NOA 45, the thick gravy, that was of the iron bean, the sweetness in the green mealies, the orange maize varieties had sweet green mealies that farmers really liked, and the early maturity, which was a good drought escape trait that farmers preferred, especially given the climate change and the increased frequency of drought. We also learned that despite our worst fears, the color change was not an adoption barrier. This is the fact that we feared that due to the drought of 1992 and the Kenya yellow maize that was distributed then, people would not take up biofortified varieties. But our experience from the LFSP in the districts where we worked was that this was not a barrier. And we also realized that despite the fear that we had, that because when you grow orange maize close to white maize, the Xenia effect causes the white maize to have an orange colored grains, farmers would reject orange maize for that reason. But the experience we had was that with proper training, that was not an issue for farmers. They practiced the training that they received and they grew orange maize alongside the white varieties. But of course, it's important for me to emphasize that training had a key role in that. The role of training and the role of behavior change communication cannot be discounted in making farmers adopt these biofortified varieties despite those changes. Okay, I think basically that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You say always save the best for the last year, because this took us. You allowed us to save a bit of some time. Thank you so much. May I take this opportunity to go back to Toko to go through the comments and the discussions. We had one question that we're discussing.
Okay, the question of how do consumers know that they are buying the real biofortified product? I don't know if any of the presenters would want to tackle this, or I can direct it to Harvest Plus, Donald and Sakile.
Okay, maybe I can come in. I don't know which crop in particular, but
I think you're just being general on the biofortified crops.
Okay, fine. At the seed level, or even at the vitamin A biofortified crop level, I think the color change just makes it very easy for consumers to be able to know that, okay, now I'm working with a biofortified variety. And then for the beans as well, fortunately at this particular moment, we find that all the biofortified bean varieties are very different in terms of their colors and the like from the non-biofortified bean varieties. So consumers know that, and we strengthen that through promotional work. The promotion that comes in to say, okay, this is what you expect from the biofortified varieties as well. And for seed companies, the labeling as well, the seed is certified, and farmers know which varieties are biofortified varieties, and by buying certified seed, you know that you are buying certified biofortified seed of any crop. Thanks, Anova.
Thank you, Sakile, for that contribution. I think I can also come in terms of the products on the shelf, mainly for the consumers. I think there is really need for the partners in the value chain to work together, because to start with the processors, especially when we look at the orange maize, you know, we also have yellow maize that tends to be darker orange, but not necessarily being high in provitamin A. So there is need to support the processors in terms of getting the information on what variety the grower grew, and also getting some samples to analyze for the basic PVA content of the particular product that they are buying, which is claimed to be provitamin A, so that they know what they are processing is provitamin A. It's not just the yellow maize that has taken the darker orange color, which is due to other carotenoids, which are not necessarily the precursors of provitamin A. So I think that's what I can add in terms of the provitamin A. I'm sure for the beans and other products like the orange fleshed, I think it is straightforward. The only complication comes when it comes to the orange maize. There was also another concern about the shortage of seed. I think it was Tinobonga who raised this, that there was a shortage of seed. What is being done to deal with the shortages when farmers need seed during peak periods and they cannot access it. I don't know if any of the presenters, because it was mainly the bean seed. I don't know if we'd still have Bruce on the line.
Sakile. Sorry, yes, I'm still there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to talk on behalf of CBI, but from my own experience, I think the management, CBI was doing what we call the non-exclusivity in terms of the marketing and multiplication of the bean varieties. I think as from that time now, this bean seed was now available in the market because there were many players now who were marketing the bean seed. But initially, I think there were very few companies, but they then opened up to what you call the non-exclusivity in terms of marketing of the bean seed. There are many companies now who are marketing the bean seed. And I think also the other approach which was being used by CBI was they will produce bean seed twice in a year, taking advantage of the favorable conditions in Manicaland there, whereby you can produce seed also in July, August, not just waiting for the rain season.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. Sakila, I can see your hand is up.
Okay, thanks, Togo, and thanks, Bruce. In fact, I wanted to add that when the program started, for example, I'll just talk about our experiences. When we started in 2015, there was basically, as Bruce said, one seed company doing iron beans and one doing vitamin A maize. But as we speak right now, there are up to 9 seed companies. We cannot discount the fact that indeed the growth in demand for biofortified crops is far higher, or it has grown faster than the supply of the seed, resulting in shortages. But there's also been some exponential growth nonetheless in seed supply, with up to from 2 companies selling biofortified varieties to 9 currently licensed by DRA and SS to market biofortified varieties. And I believe that DRA and SS is probably getting a lot more applications from companies wanting to come into the picture and also sell biofortified varieties. So it's improving, not as fast as it should be, but there is great change in that regard. Thanks, and over.
Okay, thank you, Sakile. I think we have another comment which says there's need for a sustained campaign for consumption demand creation is what will carry the day for the success and economic adoption of the biofortified crops. If the volumes don't make economic sense, it doesn't matter how good a crop is, private sector will not see any business opportunity. And another option is to push the government mandate on consumption, e.g. the same way the iodized salt or the use of the fuel E10. So I think Sakile mentioned in her presentation, even I think the earlier presenters talked about seed companies, which is the private sector, coming on board. But we want to acknowledge that they still need for more support in this area in terms of seeing the volumes going up. And Sakile, you have your hand up. I think you want to come in that.
It's an old hand, Togo. I've just brought it down. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. Anyone, you can unmute or raise your hand if you want to make a contribution as far as this is concerned. Bruce, you want to talk? Dean, you want to talk?
No, there's a hand.
Oh, okay. Dr. Madagazi, over to you.
Hello, hi Toko, hi everyone. I'm just sorry I joined in late. I was coming from another meeting, but I'm just wondering how the dissemination of the varieties has been tackled. Is Agritech heavily involved? What other methods can be used to disseminate and make sure the varieties are reaching as many farmers as possible? Thank you.
Thank you. I think, sorry, Sakila, I'll keep picking on you. I think the lesson from the LFSP maybe can help us on how the dissemination was done.
Okay, thank you so much, Togo, and thanks for the question. I think what we saw, our experience from the LFSP was that Agritech was the most farmers who were growing biofortified crops were getting their information from Agritech. So Agritech was heavily involved, and Agritech was actually the key driver and the key source of information for the farmers. So what we did was work with Agritech, work with the Ministry of Health and Childcare nutrition officers in terms of bringing awareness on the biofortified crops and doing TOTs, and then they cascaded the training to their lead farmers and whatever other structures they use as Agritech to disseminate information. And for that reason, we find that the adoption we saw can be credited almost directly to Agritech's involvement. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sakile. To just add on that, I think from the CIMMYT end, we've also been doing on-farm trials, which are really being implemented by Agritech on the ground. So they are really heavily involved in the dissemination of these biofortified crops. I think there is a question, maybe this is directed to Bruce. What is the possible explanation behind the fast cooking time exhibited in NUA 45?
Then Toko, before Bruce comes, I think we're running out of time.
Okay.
It will be the last one. Let's save it as the last, because we're going to have the ZPPA president.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay.
So to just type this as the last one, there's a comment from Enoch. He's saying, do farmers buy nutrients, or is there something wrong? Probably because people grow and eat food, not nutrients. So what are we selling? So you can combine that, and that probably can be the last comment.
Okay, the one you are talking about is saying what, Dean?
He's saying, do farmers buy nutrients?
Okay.
Is it not surprising that the bulk of farmers cite nutrition as the reason for growing biofortified crops? People grow and eat food, not nutrients.
Okay. Okay, maybe Bruce, would you want to first comment on the fast cooking time in NUA 45?
Okay, yeah, I think the previous studies, I think they were talking about the seed coat thickness as well as the cotridon cell wall. Basically, the nature of the seed coat, I mean, the thickness affects the cooking time in beans. So if it's not very thick, the variety will also cook faster. This was the explanation which we got from those who did the analysis on NUA 45. But there are many different factors also. It differs by variety. But for NUA 45, they're talking about the nature of the thickness of the seed coat.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the last one to say, are farmers buying nutrients or they buy food? Who would want to tackle that one?
Can I come in, Togo?
Thanks, Akile.
Okay, fine. Farmers indeed buy food, and this is something that the breeders themselves recognize right from the onset, which is why in the breeding for biofortified varieties, they had to make sure that they don't lose out on yield, they don't lose out on agronomic performance, they don't lose out on drought tolerance and pest and disease tolerance, which was commendable. So when we presented the biofortified varieties to the farmers, we're not presenting an inferior variety. It's a variety that is competitive compared to what they are normally growing, with the added advantage of nutrition. And when they are now told that, okay, now this variety which is giving you 8 tons and that one which is giving you 8 tons, the difference between the two is that this one has more micronutrients which are important for your growing child and for the women of childbearing age, then they decided that, okay, because it's good for nutrition, I therefore choose the biofortified variety. So they lost nothing in terms of the yield by choosing the biofortified varieties. Thanks and over.
Thank you, Sakile.
Thanks, Sakile.
Over to you, Dean.
Thank you, Toko. We did introduce you like we did others, Dr. Ndlela. is a maize breeder at Summit. She's focusing on biofortified maize, so you can get in touch with her in terms of some of the materials and so on. May I take this opportunity to invite our president, Dr. Cosmos Magorokosho, to give his closing remarks. It's been a good long 2.5 hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. I just want to take a few minutes to wind up the webinar. There's been a very long webinar, but very interesting. And I'm sure everybody has learned one or two good things about nutritious crops. I hope that this webinar has stimulated people to continue discussing issues to do with nutritious crops in Zimbabwe and even beyond our borders. So keep the fire burning, keep discussing, keep talking, keep asking questions amongst each other so that this issue of nutritious varieties becomes like a Bible as we move on to the next growing season for Zimbabwe. As we are waiting for the rains, let's also talk about the nutritious crops as part of what should be promoted in farmers' fields. I also just want to let the participants know that we have our corporate members for the Zimbabwe Plant Breeders Association who are heavily involved in the work to breed and disseminate nutritious varieties. SIDCO is a leading organization. They are marketing, I think you've already heard about that, ZS242, sorry, which is an orange maize variety. NUA 45, the bean variety that has been talked about. And I'm sure as they move on, they are thinking about as they are thinking about rice, I think they are also they should be thinking about nutritious rice. It was also a pleasure to hear somebody talk about biofortification of small grains. I think it's a very important area, and I would like to challenge our breeders at ICRISAT to think about this and start investing in breeding for nutritious varieties on the small grain side. The Crop Breeding Institute is heavily involved in the breeding of nutritious varieties and also licensing of those varieties to partners who are interested. They are also our corporate member for the Zimbabwe Plant Breeders Association. We also have the National Biotechnology Authority and the Tobacco Research Board. They're involved in handling sweet potato tubers, sweet potato vines, making sure that they are virus-free, they are good quality, and these are also for nutritious sweet potato varieties. So these are also our two other corporate members that are involved in promoting nutritious varieties. Just also to add on, we have quite a number of companies in Zimbabwe. We are in a unique position in SADC. I don't think there's any other country where you have so many companies involved in nutritious crop varieties. We have Champion Seeds off my head, we have Mukushi, we have Progeny, we have other seeds. I've talked about Seedco, we have Prime Seedco, and many other players. We have Zimbabwe Super Seeds, they are involved in this. So there is a vast amount of effort going on into scaling up and promoting nutritious varieties. So if anybody has a question, just reach out to those corporate members I've talked about, to those companies I've talked about, and also you can reach out to us at the Zimbabwe Plant Breeders Association. Okay, who is the Zimbabwe Plant Breeders Association? This is purely a voluntary organization. It's a non-profit organization. It's run by people who have a passion in plant breeding and dissemination of improved varieties. So we have a website, we have an office, a small office out there in Heathcliff, and we have our coordinator who is running it on a day-to-day basis, Mrs. Nyakanda. She's doing a sterling job, and thank you so much, Ms. Nyakanda. Thank you also to Tendai Howe, our secretary, who is also heavily involved in this. Please be aware that we are trying to raise funds through subscriptions. So as soon as you have a little bit of extra funds to contribute to the association, please do so, because we need to sustain the organization. We are not a profit-making organization, but the little that we get helps us to run our daily activities, running around, doing errands, paying for small bills and things like that. So please help us by paying for your membership subscriptions as and when you can. We are also marketing some PR materials. We have very nice t-shirts, golf shirts, we have very nice coffee mugs that you can buy for a very, very small price through our secretary, and also you can also contact any member of the association. So please do that as and when you can. I just also want to inform the participants about some upcoming activities for the next few months. We have good news for the Africa Plant Breeders Association Conference or Congress that will be held in October in Kigali. 6 of our members have presented abstracts, and they've all been accepted for presentation either virtually, or if we had funds, we could actually have sponsored them to go and present their good work at the Africa Plant Breeders Conference. So this is really commendable. We have Tino Wonga, I think he's doing his PhD. He's going to present something on maize. We have Fortunate. She is also concluding her PhD on maize, and she'll be presenting something. Dr. Kamtano Kasper at UZ, he'll also be presenting something. Prince Matoa, he will be presenting something on fall armyworm. Dr. Frank Magama will present something on tobacco, and Nakai will be presenting something similar to what she presented today on nutritious maize. So this is commendable. The association will be highly represented at the Africa Plant Breeders Conference in October. We are also planning a field event. If the COVID situation eases, we hope that we have a field event similar to what we did last year for the Pfumvudza event, but on a different theme. So we'll keep the members updated depending on the COVID situation and what unravels in the next few weeks. I would like to conclude the webinar by thanking our esteemed presenters. Job well done. I think everybody can agree with me that these were spellbound presentations. Very well done, very well presented, and apologies for the connectivity, but I think everybody made an effort to do that. I would like to thank the Food and Nutrition Committee, which is part of the Zimbabwe government, for blessing the event and giving opening remarks. I would also like to thank our discussion leader, Toko, for handling that very well. And finally, I would like to thank the committee that has put this webinar together, my secretary, Tendai, our coordinator, Mrs. Nyakanda, and all the other committee members. Thank you so much for putting this together. We will definitely share the presentations and the recording once we go through them and we make sure that everything is in order. It may take a couple of days, but we'll definitely share that like we did for the other webinars. So with that, thank you very much. We had almost 80 participants at one time who managed to spend their time with us. Have a great day. Have a good evening, depending on where you are. We keep in touch. We'll let you know about the next steps in terms of the Zimbabwe Plant Breeders Association. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before you go, sorry.
Thank you.
I know I'll be fired. I wanted Professor Simbia to just give us a few remarks on the APBA conference. She's our vice president. I know when the president talks, you have to close. Is she still on the call?
Okay, that's fine, Dean. You'll not be fired.
Yes, I'm still on the call. I wasn't prepared. I was just attending as one of you. But I'm glad that ZPBA will be represented. I wish we could have more people participating. It's going to be a very interesting conference, and we're really grateful for your support. I'm not sure how many have registered from Zimbabwe, but I think registrations are still open, so you can register. Although the program is now full, but we have high-powered speakers coming from all over the world who will be presenting. So please do attend. It's going to be a great conference, and I hope most of you have also subscribed to APBA. It's also our association, so let's support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I had to do this because, you know, when the vice president is around, you have to show respect. Otherwise, it'll be fine. Thank you so much, Dr. Magorokosho, for the session. We will share the presentations and the slides. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks, Dean.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye,
Goodbye.
everyone. Thank you for the excellent presentations.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.